Good. Hello. It's been a while since we've had an episode. My name is Erin Weil. I'm a co-founder of Film Roundtable. And today we have a really fun, I think it's going to be really fun and really informative call with all friends here. So it's going to be great. So I'm going to introduce, and then I'm going to pass it over to our hosts today. So our two guests are Jason McCormick, who is a cinematographer. He began his career working with Harris Savides before he went out on his own as a DP. He's known for Gus Van Sant's recent The Feud, which is Capote versus Swans, Olivia Wilde's Booksmart, which is one of my all-time favorite films. I think he did an amazing job on that film. It's so good. And Ryan Murphy's Dahmer, and among many others. And then we have Francisco Ortiz. He is assistant director. Jason and he worked on The Feud, Capote versus Swans. He's known for American Horror Story, Tom Clancy's Jack Ryan, The Irishman, and Wolf of Wall Street. And today, my dear friend Maceo Bishop, also a cinematographer, is going to be hosting this call with his two dear friends. Maceo worked for many, many years as a camera operator, where he met Francisco on The Wolf of Wall Street, and he met Jason while working with Harris Savides. So their friendships go way back. He's now a cinematographer whose work includes Ray Romano's directorial debut, Somewhere in Queens, Ryan Murphy's The Watcher, which he worked with Jason on, and The Curse with Nathan Fielder, Emma Stone, and Benny Safdie. And he's currently shooting Benny Safdie's next project right now. So I'm going to pass this off to Maceo. And yeah, we're really excited to have you all here. Thank you so much for taking the time today.
Thank you
for having us.
Appreciate it. Well, welcome, guys. Good morning. I'm glad we're doing this. I guess a good place to start is with The Feud, because you guys just finished working together. And was that the first time was that when you guys met? Was it on The Feud? Okay. How was that project? What was that like to work together? And why don't you just tell me a little bit about that project? Maybe Francisco, why don't we start with you?
Sure. I mean, it was a really great project. I mean, I also, it was, Ryan put together a really great group of people, including Jason, of course, and Gus at the helm. And, Gus Van Sant has always kind of been a hero of mine. I've always admired his work. So like getting to work closely with him was also, a dream. And it was a dream cast, it was a murderer's row. Tom Hollander and Naomi Watts and Diane Lane and Chloe Sevigny and Callista Flockhart and Demi Moore. I mean, it was Jessica Lange. I mean, it was such an incredible cast. And yeah, I don't know. New York period is, something I have a lot of experience in, but love to do. I never get tired of. And yeah, I mean, I think overall it was a very challenging project, but a lot of fun.
Jason, what was your experience like on this? I know you have a history with Gus. Maybe you could talk a little bit about The Feud, but also, so we can start to get into that history and what it means to, arrive at this project with Gus.
Yeah. Well, for starters, I mean, in regards to working with Francisco, the one thing, I don't know if Erin mentioned it, but Francisco, we all come from great mentors. We all were fortunate to have these really just great people who were taught by great people. And when you have a love of the craft and you share that love with somebody and they're giving you all this game. So, Francisco is David Webb, who I did 2 movies with Harris with David Webb. So as soon as I knew Francisco came from David Webb, it was like we were already friends, like I already knew. So that made it nice because that's obviously one of the most important relationships on a project is your first AD. And then in regards to Gus, I coming up with Chris Blauvelt, who brought me in the business, and and doing these films with Harris. You know, I've worked with Gus as a loader, a second AC, a first AC, as well as like I shot a sizzle reel, which I don't know if he wants people to know about, but we did. and and then being able to come in and work on this, and it also being Ryan Murphy's, you know, creation, it just was really like, I don't know, it was really creatively inspiring. You know, it really felt like this is something special. And then me being from LA, but my whole family's from New York, getting to spend, you know, 6 months in New York and work on stages and build sets and really like have a true like, you know, dig in project in New York. Because the Watcher that we did, it was much shorter. You know, I kind of came in and just a different experience. Whereas this was more like, you know, I going through the hiring of the entire crew or my crew, and you know, all the stages. Gus had me involved very early on, so you're just creatively involved from such an early stage. There's just so much, so many decisions, and having that experience in New York, it was the shit. It was awesome. That from that standpoint, it was fucking incredible. We had a dope crew, you know, Pete and John Velez and um, our operator Julian De La Cruz. I think you hooked me up with.
Yep. Yeah.
Um, uh, Bobby Mancuso on one of his last jobs as a first AC. You know, Matt Sellenkirk, our DIT. Everybody, it was just good people. The hair, makeup, wardrobe, just the vibe. Being in this like foreign territory for me, something new, like landing on a planet. Like I've never been to these, you know, Long Island mansions or I lived in that world. I'm from North Hollywood, so I, it was all like a discovery for me. So it was a great project in that regard. But yeah, hard as fuck.
Beautiful.
At the same time.
So I think one of the things that I always find sort of interesting about listening to these podcasts is like hearing about people's process. And you guys had the opportunity to work with Gus Van Sant, who's done, you know, so many incredible films and is such an incredible artist, and Ryan Murphy, who's just like a juggernaut in this business, creating you know, so much interesting work. What was the process for like, I guess the three of you, or I guess if Ryan was included, the four of you, in creating you know, a Feud? And was there anything that you could like share with people listening that was sort of working for you, and you know, ways you found to, you know, elevate the work together?
You
Francisco, you
well,
wanna start that, or Jason? Yeah, go ahead, Jay.
well, the the process was really starts with Robbie and the script. You know, um, he wrote an amazing script, and Gus had a real interest in the material independently, and I think Gus and Robbie got together for lunch, and Gus expressed interest in working with Ryan and working on this material, and it happened really quick. You know, next thing you know, he's I think he's at the Polo Lounge with Ryan, and they're talking about this project. And I think that's when I got involved, because I think I had just come off of doing Dahmer with him. Um, and I think you know, there was like a mutual relationship there. So that's how I kind of came into the fold, and it was early on. But he gave us a lot of freedom too. You know, Ryan allowed Gus a lot of room to like explore. He also Ryan's kind of collaboration with the production designer Mark Ricker, who did an amazing job. His whole team was amazing. Um, you know, that's kind of like setting the stage. You know, so it's like this. It's a really it's a much different thing, obviously, than working on the films I worked on with Gus, where it was like there's just one voice. and you could read the script and say, we're not shooting this scene, or, no, it's this, or no, it's that. So it was an auteur, collaborating with this creator. Uh, and it was a lot of fun. I mean, in hindsight, yeah, it was challenging, but it was just a really uh, um, beautiful palette that was laid out before us to play with, to pick from, to choose from. Like, you're shooting in this environment, and how do you want to play that? And and then you're getting into the performances, and these great actors with these great words, now in great hair, makeup, and wardrobe on beautiful sets, and then it's ours not to fuck up, really.
Right
Yeah,
on.
I would just add, like, as far as like process, of us three working together, and kind of the shooting of it, we did quite a bit of rehearsal. We did about, 2 weeks of rehearsal prior to shooting, and I think, there was some scene work, but really it was kind of Gus working with different groups together, kind of figuring out what the actor dynamics were. And I think after that, he had a lot more of a sense of, kind of how it was going to play. And then, obviously he and Jason and I and Mark and would scout, the kind of the nucleus, like with director scout, and Gus, um, not for every scene, but for a fair amount, especially at the beginning, would do, watercolor storyboards, which are just kind of amazing to look at. I think he has a passion for painting, but also, like, I think doing it in a kind of slow and methodical way helps him, like, think about it. And then he and Jason and I would sit together, and he would kind of show us what he was thinking. And the great thing about Gus is, like, he would ask us what we thought, and he wouldn't always take a suggestion. Sometimes he's very, he's got in his mind where he wants it to go, but sometimes he would, and I think, opening that up, and, letting, your collaborators have a voice can only, strengthen the ideas, even if you ultimately go with what you had decided to in, the beginning. So, but yes, and as a very kind wrap gift, Gus had some of the storyboards framed and gave one to Jason and I, and I still have it. It's beautiful. I mean, I would say I still have it. It's just beautiful. It's one of my prized possessions.
Amazing. How do you, Cisco, I'll start with you. Like, how do you feel like the challenges of Feud compare to other films that you've worked on? And do you feel like is there any like consistency, or is it different from project to project for you as an AD? I know Aaron was saying that we don't get to hear a lot from ADs on this podcast. Can you talk a little bit about, specifically like the challenges in your job, and how that, might compare from project to project? And yeah, take it
Sure.
from
Well, yes, every project, presents its unique challenges. Everybody will tell you every job is different. I feel like that's a refrain that's common in our business. But yeah, of course, some of the challenges are the same throughout. I think, like, as an AD, one of the challenges of this, project was just the time. Like, I've done, as I said, like, a kind of a lot of period New York, movies, and shows. And we did Wolf of Wall Street together, and that you have, a lot of pressure to get it right, and you have all these, all of these people who are excellent at their craft and want to get all of the details right and put, the excellence on the screen. But on Wolf of Wall Street, we were shooting far less material per day than this project required. I mean, part of that is just, the nature of, like, a, episodic schedule. It's, you're going to have to do more work. So that was one of the challenges. And then also, kind of just cross-boarding multiple episodes in the scheduling, was a challenge, which, is kind of also one of those things that is difficult for the actors. I feel like in a movie, depending on the size and the budget of the movie, you have a little bit more of a luxury to, kind of go in order-ish. And with this, when you're kind of like shooting, scenes from multiple episodes, we would kind of embed in a location and do all the scenes from that episode in that location and then move out. So, one of the things that I like to do to kind of help, the actors is like make continuity boards of their scenes just for them. So like they can always like have a reference of like, oh, this is the scene that I'm coming from. This is, what happened directly before. This is where I'm going. And I've been told that that's helpful. And then yeah, just from an ADing point of view, you have to kind of manage over such a long schedule. Also, like crew and cast stamina. That's something you have to be thinking about. Is like okay, we're going to be shooting this project for several months. It's like you want to obviously get all the work done, but you also want to build in little moments of reprieve when you can go to the stage or have a lighter day and kind of give yourself like a little room to recover as best as you can.
Yeah, that's really helpful. That's really helpful for sure.
I mean, and it doesn't always work out, you know what I mean? Like best efforts. And then, you come as an AD, I feel like you have, the A plan and then the B plan. And then, sometimes you end up at like the, J plan and you're like, well, I didn't want it to go this way, but this is where we are. And, I think it's, as an AD, like I said, it's kind of about planning for the contingencies and like keeping everybody informed along the way. And I think the more you can bring people into the why of the schedule or why you've planned something a certain way, the more like people can understand your thought process, the better, they'll be on your team. And, I think depending, like Jason and I had as he said, a great relationship from the start. So there was a lot of trust there. But, for some people, especially when you are meeting them for the first time, there's a little like hesitation about like, wait, why are we doing it this way? And the more you can kind of explain your thought process, the better it is. And then of course you have some people who are like, yeah, I don't want to know, just tell me what to do.
Jason, how was that for you? Like I mean, Cisco's talking about like block shooting. I know that can be challenging, like managing, so much information over such a sort of oftentimes a long period of time with these series. Like and that seems to be the regular way that it is now. For us, what is that experience like for you? How do you manage your time and sort of creating, the arc that you want to create with the images?
I fall into the second category that Francisco described, where I just said, just tell me what like, is it day or night? Oh, okay, cool. All right. I mean, I think my biggest takeaway from working with Gus on this project, having worked in different capacities and never always observing the process from the outside and thoroughly not completely understanding it, and comparatively to like what I know now. One of the things that we did works out really well for that style of producing a project in terms of the block shooting. And Gus's thing is, the material. Okay, and then you pick your spots if it's something like really special you want to do for it. But you understand the material, then the environment. So you see the environment, you know what that is. And then you basically just kind of prepare for looking in any direction as long as it makes sense, and like the production designer and their team can like afford to do that, to be able to just look wherever. And then a lot of it is like, because you're jumping back and forth, and so that there's special spots where you've pre-flagged that, but the rest of it, so much of it is like, well, the actors are coming in, let's see what they're doing, and you're kind of reacting in the moment. So the more I've done it to a degree, it's almost like playing jazz, I suppose. Like you just come in and you're just riffing. And like when Gus and I, when we were just in tune, you know, and you just come in and it just flows. And so it's not really a problem. You just have to like that's where Francisco or your first AD is really valuable because they're the ones telling me like where the fuck it is. Like, oh no, this is no, you can't do that because this hasn't happened yet, or we shouldn't, you know, and you've talked about this maybe in prep, like ideas, but the rest of it is like, you know, just trying to, from my end, everybody's done their job. People know their lines. You have all this in front of you. So I've really come to a place where the more I'm in the moment and free to explore what the best way is to capture that moment, the better it is for me. The less that I'm thinking about it or letting this, I don't know, preconceived things. I think it's sort of like the look is evolving, and that's tricky because you're finding your rhythm a little bit as a band. And I think, you know, Harris used to say, and I think it's coming from Gus, and I talked to Gus about like Elephant, like they shot and they had to throw it away because it just wasn't working. And I remember Harris saying that in a perfect world, you could just shoot for a week and throw it away and start over, you know, because it is so like everybody wants to know your look. And you're like, that's what was great because I came up in this format and it's always been my feeling. But now working with Gus, it was like having, you know, the voice that created that idea in my head solidify it. And it's like, why do I have to know? Like, why do I have to have everything figured out? I mean, I get it, but there, you know, I suppose if it's Blade Runner or something, you can't be like figuring it out. But to a certain degree, you've corralled it. You've corralled your lenses and your camera and everything and your team, and you know, you have it into like a rough shape, so you know it's going to be that. But then you're just kind of like forming it until you know you're getting deeper into the project, and you're like, okay, now we're cooking. You're thinking in that kind of vision. But in the beginning, it's so much about, you know, you have these tools and discovering how to use them. So I think the block part or the scheduling and the jumping all around or, you know, we did 6 episodes together. So it was a big cluster of things and some were, you know, parts were in black and white. And that's where your first AD to me is like, okay, bro, like this is what I'm going to do. This is what I need to do. And then I'm looking to you to like just help me know where north, south, east, and west is. Like help keep it going. And that's where Francisco was dope, you know, because it's so much to track, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a crucial relationship. For sure. Francisco, like I think this is probably a good opportunity to sort of talk for both of you guys about maybe mentors, your sort of how you sort of came into the business and maybe like a pivotal moment. I feel like we all have these like pivotal moments where a little shift happens, somebody gives you a shot or an opportunity, and it sort of sets you on a new path. Would you talk a little bit about, you know, what got you in the business and if you had a mentor or not, and maybe what a pivotal moment for you would have been in your career thus far? Like obviously it's continuing and growing in such a beautiful.
Sure. Yeah. You know, well, getting into the business, I don't have any, you know, kind of exciting story. I was getting ready to graduate, you know, from college, and I felt like there was like just a few choices. Of course, there's a world of choices, but at 21, I was like, all right, everybody I know is going into, you know, consulting or finance or, you know, going to be a doctor or a lawyer, like continuing education and or teacher. I feel like there was like, you know, 5 jobs or whatever, and I knew that I didn't want to do any of them. And I had always, you know, kind of been interested in film. I had a Super 8 camera when I was a kid, and just making, you know, little movies. And so, yeah, I was just like, all right, I'm gonna try and do this, and got a job as the PA. And the truth is, I thought maybe I wanted to be a cinematographer at that time. I had seen Visions of Light, and I was like, oh, maybe this could be for me. But I got a job as a runner, as a PA, and kind of I think at that time it was very competitive in New York, and I was full of like spit and vinegar as a youngster, and was like, yeah, I'll do that. Yeah, yeah, I'll do that. And I just volunteered. I was always the guy putting my hand up saying, yeah, I'll do it. And that just led to to one job to the next. And then I was eventually in the assistant director training program, and I feel like I blinked and I was in the DGA. So, again, I don't think that's a great story, but I was, as Jason said, I was lucky to have some very good mentors. I mean, great mentors. I feel like I apprenticed under some of the best ADs working, David Webb, and Adam Sumner when we worked together, Maceo, and I did 9 movies with Doug Torres, and I would say more than anybody else, he was really, one of the biggest AD mentors in my life, and he continues to be, someone I can always call and who I, try and keep in contact with regularly. I think he's actually, one of the, Aaron's partners in Film Roundtable. Actually, it just came to me. But yeah, Doug was a great mentor. Like I said, I think we did 9 movies together, and he, he just thought in a very different way than any of the ADs that I had ever worked for before I worked with Doug, because I think he kind of came up, in a very maybe non-traditional route. I think, he started doing, videos and indie movies, and now he's, extremely successful AD and producer. But he was the one who was kind of like, we don't have to do this the way everybody else is doing it if it doesn't work for this particular project. Like, you kind of have to use the right tool for the right job and the right approach, for the right problem. And that's something that, I've kind of carried with me. And then as far as like a pivotal moment,
When you met me.
Well, I mean, that's a more difficult question, but I think that, I mean, Jason is joking, but the relationships that you make along this way, like really kind of interweave and come back and form everything. I mean, we're talking about, Julian being the camera operator on Feud. Like, I've known Julian for 20 years. We're standing on a street corner as PAs together, in New York, in 2001. I mean, it's kind of crazy. And then, and that those relationships with all the crew that I work with, you form new relationships and meet back up with people. And so there's a lot of pivotal moments like that. But I think, intersecting with Marty was obviously huge. Wolf of Wall Street was the first job that I did with Marty, and I've been very lucky to continue that relationship as a second AD, as a first AD, on different kinds of projects, and TV shows and documentaries and commercials. But I remember when he was the one who helped me kind of make the full jump to first AD, because transitions are hard in this business. I think whenever you try and get to the next level, trying to figure out how to navigate that jump is tricky. And I have a lot of affection for him, and I just put my hand up again and said, listen, when he was going to produce Vinyl, I said, if you do the show, I would like to first it. And I had been working as a second for him on a few projects at that point, and he said, "Yeah, of course, no problem." And he made that happen for me, and that was, a real help in taking that jump. So
You just told him like, "Hey, I want to be the first," and he's like, "Cool."
I mean, I made a case for myself.
Can I have
pretty
his
much.
number
Yeah,
just in case Rodrigo's not available? Like, I just want to tell him.
Request.
I said, listen, I'd love to do this, and I think I'm ready, and I think it'd be great. And he said, okay.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Incredible. Yeah, it's a great story. Jason, I know you, I know I've heard it, but I would love to hear it again. And for everybody else, your origin story is
Shit.
fantastic.
Yeah, I'm thinking about it when you ask that question, because it's like, we only have so much time. And but essentially, I only ever wanted to be a cinematographer. And I discovered that while I was on house arrest in my early 20s, uh, as a result of, my first career, which was just, being a graffiti kid in LA and getting in trouble. Wasn't really sure what I wanted to do at that point, didn't really have like a real direction. I think I wanted to go to business school because that's what people told me to do. Um, and all those people like didn't even go to school. So I I found myself in this situation with an ankle bracelet and like 100 laser discs. And I had all these Criterion laser discs, and I started, really digging into these films. I mean, my friends, we were really into music. We were into movies, I don't want to say cinephiles. There wasn't a label, but we just loved movies. We had walls of like VHSs and then getting into Laserdisc. So I had all these Laserdiscs and started watching films, watching films like Raging Bull with Marty commentating, over that kind of shit. Like that was new. You didn't have that at that time. It's like the late 90s. And making my way through the films, and I got to this film called Sword of Doom, the Criterion film, samurai film. And I just had really started getting into these samurai films, these old Japanese black and white samurai films. I just loved them. And watching it, I kind of said, you know, um, I wonder, like, what's the cinematographer? Is that's the person in charge of shooting this? Because whoever shot, that's fucking cool. I want to do that. So that's kind of how it happened, and cut to, I ended up going to community college, and I got into USC, made my way into the film school. By that time though, I was kind of like a couple years older than the other kids, because I was a little bit late getting my shit together. So I felt like an old man compared to these kids who hadn't lived life, and I'm like going to school, trying to like just pursue this thing. And I got into a cinematography class in my first semester, and the teacher was dope. The teacher was really dope. And he to this day, man, he said shit like, just start with one light. Like things that like still have an impact. It was so simple. And funny story is I graduated, I got out of SE, I moved to New York. I lived there for a year. Got a job in a post house, because that's what you can do with a college degree, is get a job at like a facility. Like being a DP was like, where am I going to go? How am I going to do this? Like, there was I didn't know what the path was to get there. So in the meantime, I needed to work, and I had an opportunity to live in New York with my uncle. So I was there for like a year, and it wasn't working for me. I'm a West Coast dude. It just, as living there broke in Midtown, like it just wasn't working. I don't even say like, just it wasn't working out. So I'm talking to my friends back home, and one of my friends from my crew had become a tattoo artist and started tattooing, Chris Blavel. And he would tell me all these stories about hanging out with Chris, and Chris could just party and drink, and he was fucking hilarious, and he just loved him. And I'd hear all these stories, and then my friends who I grew up with out here in LA starting to get, we're starting to grow up, and people are starting to get into the business, because it's kind of like, to a degree, at least at that time, it's almost like it'd be like going to work at the Ford plant or something. Like your parents or people are in the business, so people are starting to get in. And I remember seeing a screen of somebody hitting slates in like Greece, like on an island. And I'm like in a frozen office in New York and it's dark. And I'm like, I want to be there. I don't want fuck this shit. So I called my friend and I was like, dude, can you get me anything? Like I'll work at Panavision or I'll work at the lighting place. I just need to get on set. Because that was my thing. When I went to the film school, I couldn't afford production. I did critical studies. So I watched a lot of films and I saw like all of Stanley Kubrick's films, 35 millimeter, in this class that I took. And then he died like 3/4 of the way of the semester. Teachers showed up all in black, broken up. Like it was crazy. And then we watched Eyes Wide Shut. Like it was dope. So I had like those experiences, but being on set, I didn't. And I was like, I can't, I'll learn how to be on set. I'm not going to pay more money, to go to this school when I could I'll do that part. You give me like structure and ideas and exposure to different ways of looking at film. That to me was something that and having a critical eye, like understanding the whys of things, like why are we doing that? And then the how I'll figure out on set. So I'm hollering at my boys and basically my friend's like, yo, I'm getting deported to England. You should come out because I'm probably not gonna see you for a long time. And I was like, you know what? I want to come home anyway. Like I'm burnt on this spot. So I came back and I caught him on like his last day before he left town. And he introduced me to Chris Blauvelt. And it's like 3-4 days after that, Chris is picking me up at my mom's spot at like 5 a.m. and takes me to our first job together, which was a 6-day Diet Coke commercial with Harris. And I was hungry. Like I just was like, so I'm like just coming in as a PA. Like I'm just rolling with Chris at that time. And he would hustle like on that job, which it didn't happen again for a long time. But that particular job, I was hitting slates. Somehow they were shorthanded and then they'd move somebody up and somebody's pulling focus. And then I was hungry to do it. And I remember Chris and Harris, like they were looking at me like kind of laughing because I was like under a couch and I'd come up and be like, marker, and then duck back down. And they're like, this motherfucker, And I just was ferocious when I got in. Like I just wanted it so bad. I just wanted to be great as a loader right off the top. Like whatever it was that I was doing, I wanted to be I was giving it my all. And I was appreciative of Chris bringing me in, and having this opportunity to get into the business. And about a year later, we did Jerry in Death Valley with Harris. And that's where I met, my friend Johnny Mang, who's pushing Dolly, who I still very close with, and met a lot of great people. And that was like my first film. That's when I kind of, starting to get to know Harris. And then we did Last Days in New York. And then I think it was a few years after that, and then in the meantime, like I'm moving up. I became a second and making my way. And sometime around there we did Zodiac. And Zodiac was it was 2 cameras, but it was just me and Chris and an operator. That was the whole crew. And we were up in the bay, and like the first day pushing the cart down into Lake Berryessa to do that murder scene was the first day. And I'm a second AC. Park the cart. All right, 2 cameras, blah, 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 blah. Right. That first setup, I'm A camera, first AC. And Chris is operating B and pulling his own focus, and then Kim Marks is operating. And so then I became the first on that show. And in doing such, I'm having a lot more dialogue with Harris because Harris is setting this up and, Chris is operating, he's setting up his shots. So it's like, whatever we created the beginning of like a friendship or a mentorship. So we started getting really close, and then, you know, it's 120 days, 6 months shoot. And after that, you know, like so much had gone on. I became a first AC and all this shit, and you know, you don't even, you're still kind of like processing it. He lives in New York, I'm in LA. I think he tried to get us on a movie, me and Chris in New York. Couldn't work out. Margot at the wedding. And then there was little gaps, you know, and he'd be like Santa Claus. So like I'm working in LA with, I worked with a really great DP, Yo Willems in Los Angeles. And Yo gave me a lot of opportunities. Like he was the first one, I think, to like have me operating, and he was giving me bumps all the time. Even when I was a second on commercials, he'd have me first for him. On movies, I could do B camera, pulling focus with him. So I'd work with Yo, and then all of a sudden you get this call, you know, like, oh, Harris is coming, you know. And we had this year where now mind you, during this time it was like I wanted to be a DP, and I always had my eye on the prize. I got a call to do a Nokia job with my friend. There was going to be stills, and then we were going to shoot this thing, and I was like, oh shit, and he wanted me to shoot it. I went to South Africa, Bangkok. Where else did we go? We went to Bangkok, South Africa, and fuck, what was the third spot? That's crazy. Oh, Mumbai. Mumbai. We were in Mumbai. So for 3 months, I'm traveling around, I'm shooting all the time. And I'm like, dude, this is it. I'm doing it. And this fucking Nokia job. And I get home, like the shit never comes out. Nobody gave a fuck. Nobody called. And so I'm back to first AC. And it's like, you know, sometimes I wouldn't get to work with Yo, or I wouldn't get to work with Harris. And I'm assisting, you know, you find yourself like on a Pizza Hut commercial, and you're starting to question things, you know, just like, what the fuck, man? You know, fuck. You know, it's just like, so I became a little bit like discouraged, I guess you could say. And it wasn't like I gave up on the dream, but I was just like, whatever, man. So Harris hollered to do 3 films in a row. We were going to shoot for an entire year. We did Greenberg, Somewhere, and a film called Restless with Gus. This was with Sofia Coppola and Noah Baumbach. So it was this crazy year. And the first film, it was like, you know, he's telling me like, hey, we're friends, but like you can get fired. You know, like I'm telling you, because like it was gonna be with Ben Stiller. And you know, like if an actor, somebody you piss somebody off or whatever, you know, shit can happen. So he just wanted to let me know. And kind of got like, you know, a few weeks into that film, and again, I was like not gonna be denied. I wanted to be really great. And I think there was like a halfway point, some point, like they went to dinner or something. They, you know, my name came up and they were talking about me, and he was like, so, you know, you're good. Like, it's cool. Like, you can relax now. When he said that, I was like, there's no relaxing. Like, this is it. Like, this is what I'm going to continue to do. And so now we're like deep into this, like, real, like, mentorship, because we read the script, we break it down, you know, we think about how we want to shoot it. I shoot the tests. We look at the tests together. You know, there's decisions are made. You shoot, then you look at dailies. Then I'd go color time. You know, I'm doing the DI or photochemical with Somewhere. And it's not like I sat through the entire sessions, but I was invited, you know, and I got to be a part of it, or meetings with vendors, or, you know, or just shut the fuck up and stand in the corner and observe. And, you know, me being a street dude from LA working with a street dude from the Bronx. And it was really, it changed me. It changed me because it made me feel like you don't necessarily have to change who you are. Because, you know, the concept of like, okay, well, I used to be a piece of shit. And now, like, you know, I gotta do this and that or whatever. And it's like, no, 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 no. And all the mentorship was about being like a good person and honesty and integrity, and, you know, analyze the stuff from the film school, like analyzing why you're doing things or how this impacts the audience and this whole thought process. And I think the pivotal moment was, he was like, he started talking around that time about when you become a DP. He's saying this, and, giving me books, and like, so when you become a DP, and I'm like sitting there like, when I become a DP, like when, like, you make it sound so easy, like it just, I'm gonna be a DP, and he's like, well, it is. He's like, either you're not ready or you're not good enough. And so I was like, well, fuck all that shit, you know. I know I'm good enough, so I must just not be ready. And now I have this like this voice in my head of like confidence, and he spent all this time giving me all these tools, like basically observing decisions, and the decisions are made from mistakes, like they're made from like, oh, don't touch that, that's hot, don't put that light there, that's ugly, like, so you're getting decisions, you're getting to observe decisions from somebody who's a master at their craft. And so that sense of like confidence that he saw something, that I'd say like that was a huge moment for me, where that definitely split the thing, where it was just like, okay, so the problem is I'm just not ready. And then I stopped trying, or stopped caring really. And the eventuality of it, of how I started becoming a DP, was because of just being around him, and it just happened naturally. It didn't happen in a way like I was asking for favors, or hey, like, fuck, put me in, coach. I was happy as fuck just being his assistant, doing these amazing jobs. So that was like the beautiful part of it, I think, was just the way it kind of evolved naturally over this period of like 10 years or something. And he said it would take 10 years before I even start to do good work. And he, I mean, in year 10 was Dahmer. And that was the project that Ryan, when he hired me, was like, his Zodiac was in his head. And I'm in my underwear during the pandemic, like not working. And now you're asking me at year 10 to do somewhat of an homage to my mentor.
Mm.
Well, shit,
Mm.
I knew it was going to be on from that. So, yeah.
It's amazing when somebody sees something in you that you didn't see in yourself, like way before you see it, and how much that can drive us, like, to open ourselves up to that possibility.
Especially when you're doing it now from my end, and just seeing how rare that is. Like I'm mentoring people, but it's rare. It's rare to find that quality, and it's rare to have the opportunity to be able to see it and to apply it, to have somebody do that. I think it's a really important thing in what we do as a craft. And it comes from like a shared love. It has to be like, you both love this, because that's the conversation. It's not like, I'm not sure I want to do this. That's not coming up. It's like, no, I love this. And, well, I do too. And it's any craft. I'm sure there's these relationships that happen, but within ours, it's, I think it's the most important part.
Yeah, it's incredibly important. Is there, this is sort of leading me to, think about, I guess, mentorship, and if, I mean, Jason, you just spoke to it a little bit, but is there something that this feels like, I don't want to end this conversation. This feels like it's a sort of an ending, but I was going to talk about, what you might say to some people who are coming into the business right now, like how to approach, navigating this business and looking for those sort of voices that can inspire them. Or is there something that do you have a regular practice, like Francisco, of mentoring people? I'm sure people must come to you all the time asking, how you did it and how they should go about it.
Yeah, well, first I just want to say, Jason, when you write your memoir, I definitely think it should be titled "An Ankle Bracelet and 100 Laser Discs." But yeah, I mean, just to try and answer that question, I mean, you're right. I do, I'm sure we all get, kind of inquiries from people at various stages of their, careers asking for advice. And, it's something, that I struggle with, honestly. I think telling people, your story and sharing, your process and things you learned along the way is helpful, because I think people can see something in that. And I think, being on each side of it makes you better at the other side. Like being, a mentee hopefully helps you be a mentor. And like just the same way that like going on interviews for jobs makes you better at interviewing people who you might want to hire to work for you. But I would say that, I mean, I would say two things. One of the common theme that I heard in both kind of Jason's, origin story and my own is, putting your hand up and saying like, I'll do it. And like the enthusiasm and the person who's like, oh, I want it, like being hungry. Like, I think that that is really important. And I think that always separates people. Like when I'm looking at young people, who I want to work with, the people who are like, enthusiastic, like goes a long way, like, because it's, listen, we work long hours and, sometimes, beautiful conditions like a beach in Greece, but sometimes it's not beautiful. Sometimes it's raining and you're on the street corner in Harlem. And, you have to be with people who want to be there. I mean, that changes everything. So, that is something that I would say, like, you have to really want it and show that you want it, and if you don't, that's okay too, but I think that will separate you. And then the other thing that try and tell people, and I actually told a group of people just recently, is like, you're gonna have a long career, hopefully, and I would just say, like, things will feel very intense in the moment, like, but try not to let your like lows be really low, or your highs be super high. Like, try and like take both the highs and the lows with a grain of salt, and like ride the middle, because the truth is, like, in order to have longevity, you can't, take on the great despair of, jobs you didn't get or things that didn't go your way, or, the, kind of ego of, oh, I'm so great, I just, worked with, you know Paris or Marty or whoever it is. You know what I mean? Like, you are going to have a lot of great moments and a lot of flow moments, but just try and like, you know remember that none of what happens in this is going to like fundamentally um, change, it shouldn't fundamentally change like how you feel about like yourself and the work. And you know what I mean? It's like, you're here to do it because you love doing it, and like try and just ride that middle.
Mm.
It's great advice. Jason, do you want to spin off that, or?
Yeah, like, well, that cinematography teacher I had way back, that I was talking about, taught me, right off the bat, one light, and he was the one that wrote a letter to help me get into the film school. And I graduated, and working with Harris and Chris, and they take off. Uh, they're both, like, Chris is gone for something, and I think I go like 6, 7 weeks without working, and I'm young, and I'm hungry, and it's almost like it drove me crazy, and I started questioning it a little bit, like, maybe this isn't it. And I started thinking about other things, and I was like, "Nah, I bet you those motherfuckers at the film festivals get all wined and dined, and they get to go to Cannes. Like, what's that, like, distribution, international distribution? Oh, that sounds, maybe I'll go to like law school. Maybe I'll just go to law school, and I'm gonna get into international distribution, and I'm just gonna be like James fucking Bond. And I'm gonna go to these film festivals, and they're just, oh, it's gonna be awesome." and 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 so I'm like looking into it, and I go to SC because they had like a fair with all like the booths for the different schools, and I wanted to check it out. And I even made an appointment to take the LSAT, and I looked into their law school, and I'm there with my friend who eventually got into distribution. She took the idea, and I see the cinematography teacher walked up, and he's like, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "Oh, I was just like checking this shit out. I was thinking about like that." And he's like, "Oh, well, everybody doesn't get to live their dreams." And he walked away. And I was just like, man, fuck that shit. Fuck that shit. And so the time's coming up for the LSAT, and then Chris calls, and we have like a 10-day car commercial with Harris. And it's happening right when the LSAT's supposed to happen. So obviously I take the job. End of the job, I think Harris must have bought some new meters, and he gave me his meters. And he's like, I think he sold them to me like $50, or he gave them to me. I don't remember, to be honest, but I had these meters. I had this great experience with Harris and Chris and Hector, who was training me. And I never looked back. And so now over the years, I've worked with a lot of people who like, want to be in this business, or like will want to get in because it's a good job, or because they want to make money. And that's like the wrong fucking reason to get in this business. There's a lot of better ways to make money, first of all, with a lot less bullshit. But you have to like have a passion and really like, this is what you want. That's like the first thing that is important to me when I'm seeing somebody coming in, is like, what is it that you really want? Because I've worked with people who are doing one thing, but actually really want to do another thing. And for me, this is all I ever wanted to do. So do you have that same passion for it, And are you demonstrating it on your own? Because I think people, it's hard because you want to you want to get in, or you want to be a certain place, but you got to understand how much work it takes to get to that place. And I think the first thing is just being dope on your own. Like, what are you showing anyone? Like, why? Because at the end of the day, we're just names, right? So you're hiring this name, and I do this. And so what is it about you that, like, not that I got to do something like on your own, like, what are you showing in any way, even if it's just the way you walk and talk, anything, or what you're saying, like how you're saying it, showing that kind of like passion about what it is you're doing, and the initiative. So it's sort of like, well, this person is dope regardless, and they're kind of falling in love with something that I'm in love with. And so that's interesting, and I find it to be really rare, um but getting into the entertainment business, or getting into the department or the chosen craft, as particularly at this juncture, like where we are now, and being in it, 25 years or so, you got to be resilient. You have to be able to weather the storms. This isn't for fair weathered. It's not like, oh, okay, oh, fuck, this is, like what I was going to do and go to law school. It's not that. There's going to be like, what, like that wasn't shit being off for 6 weeks, there's strikes. When I got in, all the old timers were talking to me about the strikes from like the 90s. There's a big one back then. And now, it was always like, well, this is recession proof. Well, yeah, like you gotta like really, especially now, you have to have realistic expectations of what it is you're getting into, and that's something that's evolving. Like what you want to get into doesn't even exist anymore because it's changed from the time that you wanted to get into it, you know, because it's constantly evolving. We're in an aggressive state of evolution right now. So I think, you know, people getting in, you know, need to be like aware of that. And you know, the main thing is just living beneath your means, and being patient and persistent. But the other thing that I love about what we do, what I've always loved about this business is, unlike others, there's really like it's very, I've never really heard the same story. Like whatever your origins, everybody's got a different way to get in, and or way that they found, you know, success. I've met DPs, you know, who hadn't done anything, and just their first project ever is like some massive thing. And you meet others that they're grinding forever in obscurity, doing other shit, and then all of a sudden, you know, they arise, like they get involved in a, I think of like Sean Bobbitt, you know, like he's such a dope DP, and like having such an interesting background before evolving into this, you know, so many others. So I think it's sort of like you can look to others and try to gain some kind of like idea of what a path might be, but it'll never be your path. Like it's never going to go the way you want it to go. If it does, you're a unique person. But for the most part, it's always going to be exactly what it's supposed to be. And you just need to be open and prepared for it. You know, that would be like my main thing that I would say, that I do say to people that have this, because it's like, I don't know, it could happen tomorrow, it could happen, you know, years from now. If you love it, it will happen. You know, I have seen that too. But yeah.
Well, I guess that brings me to like maybe something, a way for us to sort of end this. I think about like the business sort of has offered us all like so much opportunity and stories and ways of supporting ourselves, but it also asks a lot of us. Um and that requires some kind of, you know, source, some kind of inspiration. And I'm wondering for both of you guys, Francisco, we'll start with you, like what or who is inspiring you right now to continue, you know, creating, like, you know, operating at your highest level and making you feel excited to show up um for each of your projects? Is there anyone or anything that is exciting you right now?
Oh, that's kind of a tough question. I mean, I kind of take it as two different parts. I mean, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that are exciting to me. You know what I mean? Like, I think, um, you know, just, I mean, like a lot of the shows and movies that I'm consuming. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like, you know, um, I constantly watch things and I'm like, oh yeah, no, that would have been cool to work on, you know? And like think for me, I love things that like take a big swing, even if it's a miss. Um, you know, like yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's kind of a non-answer, but the thing that I think buoys me, like when I'm on the set, is the people. You know what I mean? Like, is the relationships. I mean, I think that has also been a theme of, you know, this, uh, this little, this chat that we're having. It's like, Maceo and Aaron, I go way back with Jason, just worked with, a couple years ago now, but I feel like is a lifelong friend. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, you can tell, like, he's such a generous spirit and someone who I hope to know, forever. And I think that you see a lot of that, and the longer that you grow in this business, like the more of those relationships that you form. And there's people, you may go, years without seeing, but then you see them and you're like, oh yes, my friend, it's so great to reconnect. And I think that, I mean, so many businesses are people businesses, but I think this one in particular, like, relationships are so important. Um, and so, like, I feel like that, and that is the big difference from job to job for me. Like, the difference between a good job or a bad job for Francisco is less about, the script or the actors or, the project, even though, I do find that I need to be creatively interested or else, I don't want to be there. But the real difference maker is the people. Like, if you're with great people you enjoy being around, I mean, that changes everything. So, I'm definitely, like I said, kind of buoyed by those relationships. Um, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, that's a really tough question. I mean, like I said, there's so much, that I'm consuming that is inspiring to me. That this, Shogun, I don't know if either of you saw it, but I was just like thinking so much about that series. And, I really was like, oh, I would love to have been a part of that. Like, I think just like the kind of the dedication and the attention to detail. Um, I mean, on some of the projects that you work on, period projects, you get all of this research material, at the beginning of the project, and you're really invited to, dive in and, like, as an AD, also, with kind of the background and the cars, and, you're building a world. And I think that, being invited in to help build that world with other people is something that is, constantly feeding my creative, spirit.
Mhm.
I don't know. That feels a little
No, no,
winded, but
I
that's
love that. I agree. I think the relationships that we develop on our projects are, can be lifelong friendships. I feel like I have that with both of you guys. And, so many interesting people come into our business, who have their own origin stories, and I'm fascinated by them. There's so many people we're fortunate to be working all, I think, at a high level right now. And, it's so interesting and unique how all of the people that we cross paths with have arrived, in this one place in time to make something. And like you said, Francisco, you might not see them again for years or a decade or something like that before you get a chance to work together again, or ever. But it oftentimes, like, creates a bond that is lasting beyond the job. I'm inspired by that. Like, that gives me a lot of hope in humanity. You know what I mean? The people that I'm walking around seeing, that there's there's a lot of passion in our business, and it's yeah, it definitely fuels me. Is that, Jason, where are you at with that?
Oh, it's funny, man. The first thing that came to my mind was my family, my kids, my wife. Like, I think that's my biggest source of inspiration for sure. And that's like giving me um the greatest joy. I think it's the greatest challenge, being trying to be a great father, a great husband, a good friend. I'd say great friend, but
Do what you
you get what you get. But trying to be a great friend, a good human being. That's the longer I've been in it. I think particularly the last 7 years since I've become a father. Um, I think that's been the biggest shift. Is my focus, like, I think, it's I think when you're younger, it's easy to be myopic because um, why not? But for me, it really, like, shifted the way I look at things. And so now I'm providing for my family, you know, and I'm their father. Like, what does your dad do? Is your dad a sack of shit? Like, is your dad dope as fuck? Like, what's your dad like? And I want to, I want to be great. It shifted the way that I drive the motor. like, I want to be a great cinematographer because this is my craft and this is what I do. And I don't want to be, I never wanted to be mediocre, but I feel motivated and driven because I'm also I think being with them gives you a sense of time and that it's not infinite and I only have so much of it. And so that feeling of like, I want to be around for them, I want to be alive to be there for them. It's like, well, you gotta be working at the highest level. Like when I go to work, I'm leaving the thing I love the most to go and perform my craft that I chose. And so if I'm gonna be there, I don't, why would I be away from the thing I love the most to be just like so-so? And so, you know, you're crossing that 10,000 hour mark, but I'm also like, um, shifted like my priorities a little bit. And I think in doing so, it's almost like a separation of the egos, maybe is a way to look at it. Like I feel free when I'm at work, when I'm doing this because I love it and I want to be here. And yeah, obviously there's times where it's like challenging or I'm tired or it's, you know, something's frustrating, you know, but when I'm there with the people and in my position, for you know, I get to choose a large portion of the people I'm going to be with, so that energy, you know, I want that energy to be positive for me and them because they're all leaving things that they love. You know, we're all leaving things that we care about more, I hope, to come and do this. So you're going into this thing to be creative. And I think for, I'm speaking as a DP, it's different, I think, for different departments. But for me, for what we do, I think yeah, I gotta have, I hopefully in prep or with a good AD, you know, I have a lot of the technical shit. I have a team. We're all worried about that, but you're focusing on, and I think being in the moment, you know, being like open, and that's what you're trying to do the same thing as a parent. I am, you know, to be present for the magic, to witness it. The difference is that I can't always, they get annoyed. I can't always have a camera on them. Like I can't document everything. So you want to be there and remember it. And I think that's like also training my muscles to be present and see beautiful things in the moment and not with an agenda, but just simply because it's what I love to do anyway. So that's inspiring. Um, the work, I think that there's, you know, there's a lot of really great, talented people out there right now. I think as frustrating or as hard as it is for everybody to understand what's happening or try to figure out or make sense of what's happening in terms of like, what is this, you know, movies or streaming or, you know, like the act of basically people watching your creative work, you know, is how I'm starting to look at it. And like whatever that medium is, they're watching your, are they watching it? Are a lot of, and do people, are they appreciating it? Is it moving them? Is it having like an impact on them, even if it's in that moment that they're watching it? That's what's up for me. And I think you know, there's so many, I think we're in a really fascinating time where there's a lot of like the movie you're working on with Benny. I mean, that's dope shit. It's not a new voice, but it's a voice that's really you know, coming into its own and having a presence. And there's more voices that I see coming up and the changing of the guard or the evolution of it. So I think there's a I feel really confident and inspired by the next wave of people and creativity because we're all learning from each other and taking it and augmenting it and we're all great thieves, so to speak. And um, so I feel like that's inspiring. But the drive definitely is coming from internal and trying to be just like you know, if I feel like the more I focus on that, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm going to continue to do, and I can't rush it. I can't make myself 10 years better. Like there's nothing I can do to do that. I'm not sitting around obsessively studying other people's work. I'm not sitting around reading, you know, journals or any of that stuff, because at the end of the day, this is how I see it. This is how I'm observing. Like for technical shit, sure. But just trying to be, I guess, truly yourself, you know, that's inspiring. And then and then deal with the reality of whether or not other people are interested in that.
Well, they are, Jason and Francisco. Thank you guys so much for this time and this conversation. It's great talking to you both. We haven't been in this forum together, and I'm so glad we got an opportunity.
Yeah, love you guys.
Yeah,
Awesome. Thank you, Aaron.
Yeah.
Aaron, thank you so much for organizing this. This was wonderful to spend the morning like this together.
Yeah, it's a really great call. Super interesting. So yeah, thank you so much. I'm gonna stop the recording and then we can like properly say goodbye. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.